So, yes, we are live. So, welcome everybody who has joined us today for our conversation. My name is Tutu Popola, and I'm the MD lead consultant of Sleek HR Limited. I have here with me the wonderful Chris Naylor. Welcome, Chris. Round of applause.
Thank you. Look at that.
So Chris is here today to talk to me about driving inclusion through digital accessibility and environmental practices. So just a little bit about Chris. I'm just going to say just a quick introduction. And then Chris would obviously tell us a little bit more about himself. Chris, after 24 years in digital, questions why accessibility isn't standard, and he is the MD of a company called Node Limited. What's the right pronunciation of your company name?
It is Bnode Limited.
Bnode.
Yeah.
So I got it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Some people say Bnode, and I'm like, oh no, it's Bnode.
Bnode. Okay, fair. Bnode, and the role is what they do is to ensure that every website includes built-in accessibility, making inclusivity a priority in today's digital world. So, welcome, Chris. Lovely to have you here. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Thank you. The sun is not shining.
Interestingly, it is shining where I am, although I expected it to be cold and grey today, but it isn't. So surprise, surprise, a pleasant one at that. So I'm not complaining at all.
Yeah, we're not raining, so that's good.
Well, exactly. So
Yeah,
it could be raining and it's not raining. Got a bit of sunshine on a Friday. Can't complain.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining me today, Chris. And I followed you for a while, and I've seen the work that you're doing, and you know what you do talk about accessibility in technology, and I think that that's really fitting for our discussion today. So over the last week and this week, I have been speaking to different experts around workplace inclusion, and the goal really is to understand better what organizations can do to be more inclusive within the workplace. And digital accessibility technology is a big part of that. So we do talk about, identity, people's protected characteristics and all that, which is good. But also, I think we need to consider the role that technology plays in terms of inclusion, and why some people are considered to be digitally excluded. I think that's the word that I've heard being used. And what can we do? What can organizations do? So our focus really is to talk about what companies can do. How can they make an impact in this area? So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with it. What made you start consider this area of work as like your main focus? How did you get to this point, and what made you think, you know what, this is what I'm going to I want to digital inclusion to be the thing that, because technology, as we know, is very wide, and you can go ahead and do so much there. But what made you think actually accessibility, digital inclusion is something I want to focus on?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, as you mentioned there, 24 or so years of doing this. I've come from the very early days of being at university and building a website in Notepad, right the way through to sort of where we've got today, before smartphones were really a thing. And in those days, the most that you'd get with regards to inclusion was probably as other than whether someone could just see it properly on a main screen, was mobile phones came out. You thought about perhaps older people that couldn't see very well, or that their fingers were shaking, and it's, don't put buttons too close to each other.
Yeah.
You can see that was the very, very early days of some kind of thought path. And then you sort of fast forward like 20 odd years from that, and there hadn't really been a lot of change. And I think for me, during the pandemic, the agency I was working for was one in Manchester. I was brought in and I was made the director by title of that agency and built their digital wing up. And we had clients that were like government-based clients and some very, very large clients, to be honest. And whenever I talked to them about like inclusion and that, it wasn't really a thing. And it really got to a point where I thought, during the pandemic, we did some work that got us on the BBC. It was with regards to helping people from an emotional side to get through what was going on with lockdown, etc. And I really felt that there was more to work than just sort of doing good marketing and getting, here's a company that's gone, here's some money and making them more money or something to that effect. That was great. And it was good building an agency and having a team that I could support financially, pay their mortgages, etc., through the business. That was all good. But, some people might have thought, oh, you've made it, you're ahead of a department. But no, I actually thought, there's more to this. I want to make a difference. And I think a lot of it was not only coming from businesses that weren't really thinking about the digital inclusion side, but also I was employing people in that, when I'd say, do you know much about inclusivity as a designer, as a developer, as a coder? And a lot of people were saying, no, not really. And I was like, well, why? Why is this? This is people coming out of university or learning at home how to code. But it just wasn't in the forefront, really. So I thought, right, that's it. Saw the pandemic through. I'd recruited some people into the company that was like, I can divvy up my role to other people. So I decided to hand my notice in and set my own business up. This was about 3 years ago now, with this as a focus, trying to make change, be a change maker, and put my energy and effort into making the internet a more inclusive place.
It's amazing the number of businesses that started off in the pandemic, isn't it? A lot of business. I don't know what it was about the lockdown. I think it was because we were all at home and had more time to reflect on, what we've been doing over the years, what do we really want to be doing, what's important. Because I don't know how many people I've spoken to, and their story has been, my business has come out, following the lockdown or during the lockdown or something. Yeah, so that even in itself is very telling, isn't it?
I think so. More to life than the 9 till 5, if you're lucky, grind or whatever it is, and just it's all about just making money so you can live your own life or something like that. Yeah, that kind of ethical, there's more to life than work.
Yeah.
And who you are and what you believe in and what matters in the world, I think. So, yeah. There's some good to come out of a pandemic.
There's been a lot of bad things that happen, and we're still living through the trauma of it, but also there has been some good initiatives, good ideas that has come out as a result of the pandemic. So that's something good, at least. So when we look at if we're focusing on the workplace and employees with disability or potential employees with disability, what can businesses do to ensure that their platforms and their tools are fully accessible? Okay,
so I think it's quite a big question to sort of say platforms and tools. If we consider things like a company's website, then there are things like WCAG or people don't know how to pronounce it sometimes. They're like WCAG or however you
pronounce it again. Say it again, please.
The letters are WCAG, and it stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. You can find them online. There's no problem. Just type WCAG in, and it will come up. And as I mentioned before, I've recruited people into businesses, and I've gone into business where there's been people, a team there already. And I found that people either don't know these things exist because they are guidelines. They're not actually law in the UK to say, a website must be inclusive or must follow these guidelines. They're just there as a kind of nice to, is a way. Which is a bit weird. If you look at America, they've got ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, and that covers things like bits of digital as well. So, if you do anything, if you sell to America or anything like that, or certain areas in the EU, there are actually laws there with regards to online inclusivity. So I would say in the UK, the WCAG is a good starting point to be aware of it, because you'll probably, I'll talk quite a lot of awareness probably through this, and not at the point of saying to a company, slap your wrists, oh, you're bad because you don't know, because it's just the way it is. People don't know. And we need to spread that awareness, because you can't be blamed for something if you don't know about it. So, yeah, there's that's out there. You do get some people that are, they simply don't bother with, if they do know about it, they don't bother with it, because either, they're a business that's, on that treadmill of business, and they don't have the time. I find that there's a lot of agencies out there, or people, you can get a website for a few £100 because someone will do you this, or you can buy a template online and try and modify and put, your logo here and that kind of thing. And they're built with none of this in mind. They're just a fast churn over, cheap website, bam, 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 get it on there. And, they don't perhaps value the importance of it. Because it does take time to implement these things to a website. It's things like not just the consideration of color variation, but also one example is you can put markup on there, so that if somebody is visually impaired to a point of being blind or close to blind, they will use a page reader for viewing the internet and viewing websites. And what that will do is that will read out the content of a website. Now, if somebody's not used markup following that WCAG guidelines, it might be that sections of their website is missed. It might be that it just says on the top navigation, it might say something like link, 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 and then go into the content where link doesn't mean anything, because somebody's not said what it is.
Let me interrupt you a little bit. Before we go on to color variation and the use of a page reader, I just wanted to share some information about the WCAG.
Yeah.
So this is me checking online, because obviously I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are part of a series of web accessibility guidelines of the World Wide Web Consortium. And they are a set of recommendations for making web content more accessible, primarily for people with disabilities, but also for all user agents, including highly limited devices such as mobile phones. Yeah. So that's in case anybody's following this and they're thinking, what exactly does it mean?
No, that's great. Yeah. I just wanted to say there are actually 4 key points for that. I'm just going to quickly touch on them. I think it is important.
Thank you.
So, I mean, and if people remember these again, it's quite good. So the first one is perceivable info and UI, so user interaction, UX, user experience, that kind of thing. So, and when I say that, I mean the layout. So information and UI components must be perceivable to users in a way, that they could see things. Operable, you must be able to navigate things. So like I said, with the link, that doesn't actually tell somebody where they're going, but if the link said home about us, that would be good. Understandable information and the operation of the user interface must be understandable. And that's, like I said, across a multitude of either, the colors right for people that, again, are colorblind or have Irlen syndrome, so they can't differentiate between colors, as one example. And the last point would be robust. Content must be robust enough so it can be interpreted by a wide variety of individuals, including those assistive technologies, so that those devices are able to read a website in the correct order. Someone's built like the footer first and then the main part and then built the top bit of the website. If you don't do your markup correctly, it might read it in that order, which is not good for anyone. So putting that time and effort in to code a website right and to mark it up in the right way to give somebody who is visually impaired, for example, the same experience or close to the same experience as somebody that is able to see.
Thank you very much. That's actually very useful to know. And also from a candidate attraction point of view as well, I think that that would be good, because if candidates are looking to work in your organization and they have visual impairments, and they can see that your website allows them to read the content correctly, it shows that you've actually thought through inclusion from that perspective, from their perspective. So you're interested in them, and you've thought about, their experience that they would have in when they come and work for you. Because I think a lot of times organizations think about inclusion for those who already work with them, if they are thinking about it, but not so much those who potentially would work with them, and even potential clients that may have visual impairments as well. So I think this is.
I've got some stories on that. I'll quickly jump into it. As a lawyer, a legal firm that I was talking to, and when they send a document out, they highlight areas like, it might be, say, pink is what they need to fill in, yellow is what somebody else needs to fill in. And they just had these colors through their documents, and they were on their like PDF files or online files. And they've had people come back to them and say, I can't see where to fill. The colors are the same, because they hadn't picked the actual shade or thought about somebody, again, that was perhaps colorblind, that could see the difference. I'm an avid board gamer, and a lot of board games now, if they don't just use color to change, they might say this one has like a hash pattern on it, or this one has like little diamonds on it. So somebody who's visually impaired can see the difference between things without just relying on the color. And that is a key thing for the WCAG as well. Try not to rely just on one differentiation when you're looking at your digital assets. So don't just say, well, this section's highlighted in green, this section's highlighted in blue, so it's easy for somebody to see the difference. No, make sure that, for example, it's underlined as well if it's a link or something to that. I mean, there's the color vision deficiency affects 1 in 12 men.
Oh.
So 1 in 12 men, 1 in 200 women have some form of.
That is really interesting. That is quite a wide gap between men and women.
It's to do with chromosomes. I think it's to do with chromosomes. So men are like one and the other, and women are 2 of the same. At least this was I was told by somebody. So if one of them doesn't work properly or correctly for a man, they're kind of a bit, there we are, game over. But for a female, if that chromosome is a bit gone or dysfunctional in one way, then there's still the other. I might be talking rubbish, but that's what I was told by somebody, of why there's that massive difference in it, because it's easier for a male to have the colour vision impairment because of chromosomes. But again, I say to companies, do you have 12 men in your company? Yeah, one of them's colourblind. You might not know it, but one of them's probably colourblind.
That's actually good to know. And I think I need to do a little bit of research on that as well. Because I didn't know that information. I guess that's part of the beauty of having conversations like this with experts, because you would know all the data and all the stats that supports these ideas. So apart from people with visual impairments, is there any other accessibility considerations that we can think about when it comes to inclusion within the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely loads. I mean, people being neurodivergent, etc. At the moment, there's a lot of talk around autism and ADHD, and there's a lot of research that you can look into out there with regards to how to make non-overstimulating. So a common trend, and it's been a trend for several years, is people will look at a website from a company, or maybe a company's thinking about having a new website or digital asset, or even doing a presentation, a PDF, or something like that, and they'll go, let's have something whizzy and movie. I want it to go swoosh and come in, that shows how advanced we are and how technical we are. It seems to be a bit of a show off, for a company to say, oh, when you're scrolling down the page, look at all these bits that twirl in and move in and things like that. And that is exceedingly overstimulating for a lot of people. You look at things like dyslexia, you look at people that have got ADHD and they're easily distracted by things. You put that onto a website, individuals can find it really difficult to actually focus on what the content is on that website. So it's also about overwhelm. How much text do you have in a paragraph? Do you have these big bits of text, or do you break them up? How much space do you have? The colors that you're using, are they calming colors, or are they quite stark, high contrast colors?
Okay.
Which you might think is great for, like, let's have a button and have it bright yellow and it boom, there's our button, you can see it. But if you've got other aspects around the site as well, they can be quite overwhelming for people and put people off.
Is that why that makes sense what you've just said, actually? Because you see a lot of companies now are going for the clean, less text look on their websites. So as opposed to having lots of colors, lots of different variation, they're kind of favoring like a more clean, simple type website. So that actually makes a lot of sense, what you've just said. So where does the environment come into this? Because I have seen quite a few websites where there is a CO2 reading at the bottom somewhere. So now I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this, because I'm not. This is why I'm speaking to you. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So again, I think it goes in line with the ethical side. I mean, it from what you just said as well, it flows quite nicely. You mentioned about websites going for less fancy things, etc. on that. And yes, inclusivity is one, but you've got a win-win situation if you're also someone who cares about the environment and has those strong sort of ethical beliefs. And I'd say that's because if you look at the CO2 output of digital, so a website that's not got lots of techie code that's making it do these whizzy things in the background, if you're looking at not displaying loads of different colors and big graphics, on a huge video when you land on the website that's playing in the background, all of those things are data and size. And when somebody views a business's website, what they're doing is they are pulling it from the server, and all that data, all those bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, etc. They're all traveling across the internet and coming to your machine and being displayed on your screen. And that has an energy use. I was at a school recently, and there were some young kids on like their business course, and they were saying that they didn't realize this. They just thought, well, you plug a computer in and it's the power that the computer's drawing. That's your energy use. You've got a monitor and it's, well, how bright or energy efficient is the monitor? They had no idea about the data that was traveling. And I feel that it's a corporate responsibility to be aware of that. I've spoken to companies that are claiming that they're net zero, but when I look into their digital assets, they're not running on a renewable energy server. So their actual data, the hard drive that holds that website, the kilobytes of their website, is, coal powered or something to that. And, they could shift over to a renewable energy server like the one I have at Bnode. It's that's running on 100% renewable energy and not using carbon offsetting. And this kind of falls in line, as I say, with regards to how your digital assets look and whether you're considering it from an energy use. What I would say is probably, other than that, it's more about the ethics. If you're somebody who is an ethical brand, if you want to be inclusive, or you are inclusive, or you're selling something that is to do with the environment or to do with, reflecting your morals and who you are about inclusivity, it kind of goes hand in hand with regards to the consideration of environmental impact. It's not a lot. It's not if you've got a small website that just gets a few hits every month, you're not going to see a massive difference from it. But if you're a larger company and you get, hundreds, thousands of people visiting your website, then it all does add up. If your images aren't optimized, it all adds up. I think the final sort of crossover to that is I work with the Digital Poverty Alliance with regards to they first started out, and it's very much about people that can't afford equipment or live in areas where the internet isn't great or they can't get fast broadband. And I was saying to them that the whole inclusivity aspect is accessibility as well. If you've got a website that's doing lots of heavy code, so it's big for the environment and it's got videos on it and it's not being optimized as somebody's built the website, they're using big images. Well, if someone's still running on a really slow internet or they've got a very old mobile phone, then they can't view your website properly. Your website's going to take ages to download, or it might even crash out on their device because they may say, sorry, it's timed out because it's taken too long to get all of that. And what that company's then done is they've been excluded. They've excluded somebody who perhaps isn't in such a wealthy background for coming and being a part of a company. And they could be a massive valuable asset to that company. They could be an engineering genius, or they could be, they could be anyone for any company with regards to Rootman. So from a HR point of view, not being inclusive, can actually the environment and what you're doing with your digital assets can have an impact in that way.
I've also heard about the use of video, or should I say the overuse of video, and how it impacts like the environment, and everybody wants to get on a video call these days, and whether we could think more about whether it actually needs to be a video call, or whether it could just be a call. And also the use of emails, sending big attachments and things like that. So I have heard a little bit. Would you like to share some light?
That's a huge thing as well. So again, everyone that I speak to, if they're sending big attachments in emails to say 12 people or something like that, I think the fact is that Google's, I'm taking off the top of my head, I've not got it in front of me. I think sending the average email, so it's maybe just a bit of text that's got a picture in the bottom, a signature or something like that, is the same as having a 60-watt light bulb on for 3 seconds. I think that figure is right. It's either that or that's what a Google search is.
It's 60 watts.
A 60-watt light bulb on for 3 seconds is your standard email or something like that. Have a check. I can see you typing away there. I've not got it in front of me. It's either that's that fact or it's the same fact as somebody doing like a Google search or something. But I think it's the email one. But anyway, if we go with that, you can think about when you send an email. Again, it's going through the channels. It's going from your device. It's going into the server. The server is then seeing it and then sending that across to everybody's inbox. Now you've got 12 people. That file has been sent to those 12 people. So let's say it's a meg file. So that's 12 meg. That's gone out, that's gone through all of those and to everybody's inbox. And that's going to stay in their inboxes. That's going to stay on that server forever and a day. Now, if somebody had used like a cloud-based storage, upload the file and sent in the email, here's a link to the download in the to get it from the cloud service that they're using, their email is not a meg anymore. It's just a few kilobytes. So what you've done...
That's really
what you've done there is if somebody doesn't see the email, it goes into spam. They've not clicked on the link and they've not got it in their inbox, taking up space. If it's kept on their computer, well, it's only kept on their computer if they clicked on it and downloaded it. But the link's there for them to click on it and view it whenever they want online, and only when they want, rather than it building up, data and data and data. So that's just one example, again, of how businesses can think a bit more eco-friendly in just their day-to-day digital operations.
Not to toot our own horn or anything, I actually feel quite proud now because we tend to do what you've just described, which is not send big attachments. Usually everything is in folders and links are shared, and then you can go in and access that folder as opposed to sending it many times. But I mean, we are doing something right, so we have to take credit for that one. It's really good to know that it does have we have done it more from the perspective of having like organized information and not having too many versions of different documents floating around. That's why we've kind of favored that approach. But it's also good to know that it does have a positive impact in terms of how our use of the environment and looking after it. So that's really good. What about, I know you've talked a little bit about this before, which is around the common digital accessibility barriers for employees. I know you talked about sending, having like big texts, large videos, and how some people wouldn't necessarily have the right internet bandwidth, or maybe because of the device that they have, might not be able to open that. So that is making me think a lot about, clients that we work for. Some of them are in, like, I wouldn't call it rural, but semi-rural areas, who don't necessarily have the type of network that's available across the country. And then even when working with clients who are international as well, not everybody's got the, I don't know what you call it, the highest optic fiber speeds, whatever. Not everyone's got that. So there is an element of digital exclusion there.
And some people are on tariffs. Some people, if they're from less wealthy backgrounds, pay per megabytes. And, if they're going to download, say, a PDF file that you've not optimized, and it's got lots of pictures in it, picture, and all these PDF files, it's like, well, that's going to use a load of their bandwidth up, when it could be just text or more simple images, and those could be optimized down as well. PDFs is a massive thing. Lots of people don't know that you can put alt text on PDFs, so again, if somebody's visually impaired, they can actually have it like a page reader, read a PDF, so they can understand what the images are, or if it's just like a background color or something like that.
Yeah. When we talk about, environmental inclusion at work, for example, and we talk about being environmentally conscious and all that, I feel like this is the digital aspect is something that needs to be talked about a little bit more, because there's a lot of focus on things like, ensuring that we're recycling, that we're not on travel, for example, using the right, mode of transportation and all that. But the one that I think most people are probably more guilty of is the digital, because everyone's got a device these days. I say most people, and we're not really thinking about the impact of, what we're doing, what we're downloading, how much downloads that how much we're downloading, how many emails we're sending back and forth, the videos we're streaming online and all that. So there is quite a lot, to think about there. So in terms of integrating digital accessibility.
Barriers, yeah.
And is there any other, before I go on to that, is there any other barriers that you want us to talk about?
Yeah, so I've talked about the neurodivergent individuals kind of thing. So one of the things is there's a website, bdadyslexia.org.uk, and they state that 1 in 7 of us are neurodivergent, which is about 15%, which is about 10 million people in the UK. Now, 10 million people, I think you asked it originally, you were saying, like, what's the most common? Again, it's difficult. There's lots of sort of inclusion that you need to consider. I feel that things like autism, ADHD, although we are getting a lot better with it, the whole concept of people masking is massive. They're afraid, they mask, they don't want people to know, because they have fears of people perhaps treating them differently, or not getting the job or something to that. But, if their figures already are saying like 1 in 7 in the UK, that's massive. And if you think that, again, that's not necessarily just people that are looking to get a job in a company, but maybe even the people that currently work there, to say to somebody that, oh, I'm autistic, if somebody said that, they might think, oh, great, I've said that now, and people are going to think, oh, well, I can't do this, or I can't do that, or I'm going to need this, that, and the other. So they just mask. They just keep it quiet. And you could totally understand that. And I feel that, a business that's out there, if a business has something, of course, I would say an accessible website, but if they have an accessible website, if their marketing material is out there and being considerate, if they advertise on places, LinkedIn, etc., Facebook, wherever they advertise that, they are considerate of the environment and they're doing these kind of things, somebody either that works in that company or wants to join that company can most definitely go, do you know what? This is a company that is this. I feel comfortable enough to not mask, or to be able
Yeah.
to sit there. You know, if people could live it, if I could live in a world where people sat in an interview and went, you know, hi, my name's Chris and I'm autistic or something like that, so I need X, Y, and Z. The confidence of doing that, I think, will only come from businesses that are outwardly showing that somebody can do that. You know, think if you had a designer that was one of those 1 in 12 men, for example, that was colorblind, or one of the 200 women, and they said, I'm a really good graphic designer, but I am colorblind, so all I need is some sort of filter for my screen. That's all I need, and it fixes it for me. If they could feel confident enough to do that, rather than go, I'm going for a designer job, I'm not going to tell them I'm colorblind.
You know, that's really interesting what you've just said. And part of how we try to mitigate this is just by asking people upfront to tell us.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting for, so that might be something, there's an organization that's watching this or replay or live that's thinking about what can we do to make people more comfortable to tell us whether they need any adjustments as well. Ask them, and don't wait for them to tell you, because there is actually a lot of wasted productive time whilst you're waiting for people to tell you. So, and some of the touch points where that can happen is actually before they start working with you. So with the clients that we support, we would state it during advertisement of a role, to say that if there is any adjustment that you require for this process, anything at all that can make your life easier working here or going through this recruitment process, please tell us. And we would also ask at interview, we would ask again when they join, when we're issuing contracts, because I feel like the more times you ask, the more people actually believe that you mean it, and you're not just asking it because you want to potentially discriminate, against them, or maybe then becomes an issue for them working with you. So this is such a big, especially within the area of neurodivergence, because it's not always disability or neurodiversity is not always obvious. It's not always obvious. So companies should ask. Don't wait for people to tell you, or maybe they will, maybe they won't. Don't wait until they're struggling, or maybe they then start having performance issues, and then all of a sudden it then comes out as something that's not going to be dealt with, when you could have asked this right at the beginning of the journey. So it's really good. Thank you for stating that point. I just wanted to add that in case anybody's thinking, how do we do this? Are we even allowed to ask people
to ask?
Yes, you are. You can ask for the purpose of providing the necessary adjustments for them. Yes.
And I've seen people in businesses as well, be if they are, but say on the spectrum, and perhaps they don't like being going out on like work dues or things like that, the anxieties that they build up and all that.
Social
so they keep
anxiety.
saying, no, oh, I can't make it. Oh, I can't make it. Oh, I can't make it. And then people are like, God, this person just doesn't care, isn't a team player, doesn't want to be a part. They've just never asked. They've never thought to ask, and they've never gone, what could it be like for somebody that really struggles like that? So because again,
they have to try and understand. So it's a social situation that's potentially going to cause anxiety of some sort. Now you're expecting them to be there, to smile, to be sociable, to talk about the weather, and those are things that they might find really difficult, where they spent the whole day at work, probably masked halfway through it, and now instead of going home to try and recharge their social battery, you're then asking them to come out again for another session of the same thing that they've just basically gone through, and they probably say, actually, no, I just want to go home now. So that's why it's really important to think about the experience that other people are experiencing in the workplace. That's different to how, should I say, the majority of people are experiencing it. So I'm really pleased that we've managed to touch on that, actually, because it's something that often gets forgotten. So thank you very much for that. Do you want us to go on to talk about how digital accessibility and environmental practices can be integrated? You have some examples that you can share with us. No pressure.
No.
I don't want you to feel under pressure.
Yeah, I think again, we've talked quite a lot on the visually impaired side of things, and I do think it's important. And we talked obviously about the whole sort of like on the autism spectrum, etc. And we talked colorblind, haven't we? Visually impaired. I think there's a few facts which are along those lines. I mean, there's a site out there, disabilitysport.org.uk. Again, I like to quote where I get these sources from. They stated that there's almost 2 million people in the UK that are blind. The part of the digital NHS website as well said that between April 2019 and March 2020, there were 57 registrations per day for blind and partially sighted people. So when you start looking at these sort of numbers and you start thinking, I think so from a marketing point of view, if you were a company and you sold, say, perfume for like women, for example, something like that, your target audience it's a female's kind of smell, it's that fresh smell, and we feel like we've saturated the market. We're gonna have to put all of this energy and effort now into where do we go? And they're like, well, let's do an aftershave for men or something like that. And you sort of expand your business when you start looking at, well, are you inclusive? Are you including the 2 million people that are blind that can't read your website? Is your website okay for the 3 million colorblind people, the 2.8 million that are neurodivergent? There's huge numbers. I think the what they call the purple pound. I'm not sure if you're aware of what the purple pound is. It's the buying power in the UK of families that have at least one disabled individual in it. If you look at how much that is per year, you're looking at £249 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for people that go, do you know what? My father or my mother or my brother or sister, they have difficulties. They are disabled in one way or another. They want to buy from companies that, are considerate of that, because that's their lives. That's what they're doing. That's what they're going through. So I think if I could touch on...
Let me pause you for a minute, just interrupt you there for a minute, and I would let you finish after this. I've just looked up the purple pound, and I will put a link in the chat shortly. So the purple pound refers to the spending power of disabled households, which is what you've just said. A household in which at least one of the members has a disability. And there are some stats here, which is quite interesting. 1 in 5 potential UK consumers have a disability. There is £2 billion. Businesses lose approximately £2 billion a month by ignoring the needs of disabled people. And 73% of potential disabled customers experience barriers on more than a quarter of websites they've visited. Those numbers are quite staggering, and I will post the infographic if anybody wants to look into that a little bit. I just wanted to just share that to support the points that you've just made.
I'm glad I was right off the top of my head as well on those numbers.
Chris, you're the expert. You're absolutely right.
No, that's great, isn't it? And I find that when I'm talking to businesses, or I'm doing things like this, or live events and talking, you see people's eyes go, what? And they're just, it's great. It sells itself in a way, doesn't it? Really, like, why wouldn't it?
It does really, and it's amazing what we tend to miss out, because we're not thinking about all these factors. We're not thinking about the people within society, and and at work as well. We're not necessarily part of the majority. So there is almost like like a drive to try and sell or to try and cater to the people that we consider to be the majority. And then there's all these people on, should I say, the fringes where we've kind of missed out on, and they don't feel included. Whereas we're literally leaving money on the table, should I say, because of this. So the Purple Pound is probably something I will be posting further. I'm going to look further into, and also be posting more about. So thank you very much for sharing that information. That's very useful to know. So if you can think, I know we've said a lot today. Is if What are the two things? I was gonna say one, but I don't think you'll be able to give us just one. So I'll double that quota for you, Chris. If there are two things that you want businesses to remember from today's conversation, especially with regards to workplace inclusion, there are two things that you want them to remember. What would they be?
I think as a general sort of conclusion to it, I would say that being inclusive isn't a hindrance to your business. It's not just something else to do, or, oh God, we've got to make sure that we're crossing these T's and dotting these I's now, and doing that. I think it's a fundamental part of businesses these days. It's not just the right thing to do, like I said, from an ethically point of view, but it makes that business sense. We touched there on the Purple Pound. We've talked about team retention and individual, and making sure that perhaps giving the confidence that if somebody sat there that's been in your company for over a year or more, now sees, God, my company's doing all of these things now, and we've just had a new website done that's inclusive, and we're doing all of these things. I feel now's the time for me to say, well, actually, I fall into that category, and how much pressure that can relieve to retain somebody, rather than go, God, it's another works outing. Oh, I can't handle all of these, that kind of thing. And increasing a business's sales. People want to buy from an ethical company these days. There's you look at Generation Z or Z, there's a lot of people that are out there that want to buy, that care about this. They want to buy from companies that reflect their values. The amount of dyslexic people out there, they want to be able to read your website easily and buy from you. Think about your competitors. It's just like, well, maybe you go, well, the difference between my company and someone else's is I'm in this pricing war. We're selling this product, and this product is the same everywhere. All I can do is fight with price. It's not, you can actually fight with who you are and what you're doing, and people are more likely to buy from you, work with you, and work from you. That it makes business sense, as well as it being, well, let's just try and change the world. I want to live in a world where people look at a website and say, where's your accessibility tools? The same way that somebody would look and go, where's your contact form? Where's your buy now button? It just doesn't make sense to me that, if you had a big company and they went, we sell all these products, and sorry, Mr. or Mrs. CEO, our buy button's been broke for a week. People would be on it like that. Get that buy button fixed. So why aren't they saying, sorry, the colors that we've used, the font that we've used, the fact that someone who's visually impaired and using a page reader can't see our buy button? Yeah. So I think that's a business and an ethical sort of answer, really. Is I think one or several of the main things to take away from this is, it is important, and the world is changing. There's a lot of, you think stuff like COP26, we're going more to an environmental consideration. People are looking at sustainability chains. They're looking at things like going B Corp. They're looking at going, you have to do these things, or we're going that way. We want to hit that target of being a net zero country or a world. This is all really important. And although some businesses out there are very much like, well, I'll do it when the government forces us to do it. If you don't do it now, it's going to take you a while to get there. And if you're not doing it now, you're probably going to miss out on a load of finance, business, growth from it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I don't think I could have put that any better, to be honest with you. And I've taken quite a few quotes, I've written quite a few quotes down from what you've said right there. So thank you very much, Chris. That's very useful.
Okay.
I think we've come to the end of this, but I must say before I close this, I have really enjoyed, this discussion, and I've really enjoyed speaking to you and just learning from the knowledge and the wisdom that you've shared today. And I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for saying yes, for coming. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So if people want to find you, Chris, can you give us, I mean, I'm gonna put your details in the show notes anyway, but for anyone that's listening, where can we find Chris?
Yeah, you can find me online. The website is Bino, that's a capital B and then node.co.uk. I'll come through to us on our website with some bits of info on there. And I'm also on LinkedIn. If you just search for Chris Naylor, I think it might say digital director or something like that on it. You can find me there on LinkedIn. Chat a lot about businesses and things on there.
Okay, thanks very much. That's very useful. All right, we've come to the end of today's session. I can't believe we've been speaking for almost an hour. Where has time gone? I can't actually believe that. It feels like I've only spoken to you for 20 minutes, and that can only mean one thing. You have to come back so that we can talk even more. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's been watching on live as well, and potentially those of you who will be watching on replay. If you've got any questions or comments, please do reach out to us. Your information will be in the show notes. So just once again, my name is Tutu Popola, and I am the MD Lead Consultant at Sleek HR Limited. And I have been chatting to the wonderful Chris Naylor from B Node. So thank you. And yes, I hope that you have a lovely rest of the day for everyone. And yeah, you take care. Bye now.